My name is Pramod Achan. I'm a consultant orthopaedic surgeon who works at Barts Health, One Welbeck and the Princess Grace Hospital. I specialize in hip and knee surgery and have been in consultant practice for 16 years, but involved in orthopedics for nearly 30. People ask me why I chose to specialize in orthopedics, and I have to say it started at medical school, and the fact that my father was an orthopedic surgeon is a slight aside because that didn't really influence me. But when I was at medical school, the people who seemed to enjoy their work the most were the orthopedic surgeons. And so I thought when I started in training that I would experience a little bit of time in orthopedic surgery, and it only reinforced that feeling that these people enjoyed their work. But much more than that, we dealt with patients with an acute problem that had what in medical terms they call a closed episode. So you would see them with either a broken bone or an arthritic hip. You would do an operation, it would make them better, and they would say thank you and goodbye. And when they said thank you and goodbye, it was the most sincere and genuine gratitude, because we'd transformed what was a devastating problem for them and given them their life back. And for me, it's that satisfaction, but also the correlation with the quality of surgery. If you did good surgery, you got good outcomes. When I did other surgical specialties like neurosurgery or general surgery, you'd see amazing surgeons do great work, but actually other factors played into the outcomes. With orthopedics, that's not the case. And the last thing was, you can't hide what you do because x-rays and imaging tells you. So if you are a perfectionist like I am and you want to do a great job every time, then you can get your peers to review all of your images after the surgery, and they can acknowledge how well you've done. And that means a lot to me because once again, it correlates with the outcomes for my patients. Where did I grow up? So I was born in Barnstaple in the West Country to a medical father who was moving around the country in his training at the time. By the time I was 6, my parents were slightly concerned that the 3 boys were becoming a bit too English. So they moved back to India, and I lived in Kerala, which is where my parents are from, between the ages of 6 and 13. And then at 13, I came to board at school in Mill Hill in London, and spent all of my school years in London. I enjoyed school immensely. I was a monitor. I was captain of the first 11 at cricket and hockey, having played for those teams since the age of 14. And that kind of kindled my interest in sport, which was a lovely crossover for when I chose to do orthopedic surgery. And then when I left school, I went straight to medical school at Barts, which is where I work in my NHS practice now. And joined medical school in London. So I've principally stayed in London and grown up in London and still live in London. But as part of my training, I did fellowships in Australia, in New York, and then I've done traveling and visiting fellowships to most continents around the world, where I've given lectures in my areas of interest, which are hip and knee surgery. People ask me what my patients value about me and what I value about them. And that's a great question, because what they value about me, I hope, and obviously I rely on feedback to confirm that, is that I'm very honest, I'm very sincere, and right from the start, they get the impression that I'm someone who cares about them and tries to understand what it is they want in terms of treating the problems they have, so that we can get to where they want to be. And in some patients, that's just getting rid of pain, but in other patients, it's getting back to being competitive at the sports that they love doing. So they value my honesty, my ability as a surgeon, not only to explain the procedures and the treatment options that we have, but also to run through the potential risks and complications so that they can make an informed decision as to how to proceed. My reputation also as a teacher and educator helps. Because often they've heard by word of mouth that I'm somebody who's trained a huge number of orthopedic surgeons by running a residency program. In terms of what I value about them is their honesty and their commitment and their dedication. I think once my patients understand what it is we're trying to achieve, what the problem is, and how either a non-surgical or a surgical option is going to help them, I always find that their commitment to trying to get better is immense. And I value that immensely because that's what gives good results. There's only so much that I or the allied health specialists like physiotherapists can do. Ultimately, it's the patients. Once they understand the nature of their disease, the nature of the treatment, and where we want to go, then the results are measurably better. So I value that a lot. So people often ask, what are the challenges facing orthopedics as we go forward? So in some ways, the greatest challenge is that more of us are focusing on health, staying active. And so to hear of 40, 50-year-olds, even 60-year-olds who regularly involve themselves in either triathlons or park runs, playing golf, playing team sports, is brilliant. It's good for society. It's good for all of us. But that, of course, brings with it injuries. And one of the challenges is getting people to understand that as a surgeon, I want them to stay active. I want them to do the things they love, but they do have to approach it slightly different. I mean, we all remember, I give a classic story to patients that when we were 15 or 12, like my children are now, you run into a football pitch and you start kicking the ball straight away. There is no warm up and there is no warm down. But by the time you're in your 20s, you dedicate 10 minutes of your 1 hour to warming up and stretching, but often you don't have time to do anything at the end. By the time you're 30, you need 5 minutes at the end, 10 minutes at the start. And once you're into your 40s, you're almost 20 minutes at the start and 10 minutes at the end. And if you only have an hour to exercise, you can see how that's only half an hour of exercise once you've done your warm up and your warming down at the end. But nevertheless, unless you do these, you're making yourselves prone to injury. So that degree of education, that degree of information can prevent a lot of the diseases and injuries that I see. The other challenges is using the new modes of technology, digital health, artificial intelligence to help us manage. You know, we're starting to introduce smart implants in some of the work we do that can tell us about how fractures are healing or how knees are rehabilitating. And all of that is super exciting and something that I'm very much involved with. So there are going to be challenges, but I think equally the potential for the development and treatment of these conditions is ever growing, and it's a super exciting space to be in.